All right, hey there, and welcome to this episode. My name is Matt Codde. I'm a licensed clinical social worker, and I'm also the founder of Restored Minds. And on today's episode, I really want to talk about my story. And the reason I want to share this is because I think there's so many people out there who are in the realm of mental health or self-help or personal development that want to project this idea that they have had it figured out their whole lives and that, that they're perfect and anything like that. And, that's exactly the opposite of what I want to communicate in this channel. And so what I wanted to share is kind of my own struggle with mental health and kind of my journey to, really overcoming it and where I am today, in the hopes that wherever you are on your journey, you're able to use some of the things that I learned on my journey to help you overcome those struggles or more importantly, avoid those obstacles altogether. And so what I wanted to do is I want to just take today and tell you about my own story. And so with my own personal struggle, I struggled with something called OCD, which is obsessive compulsive disorder, which is an anxiety disorder, basically, where you have these intrusive thoughts that just kind of pop up, and then you end up engaging in these compulsive behaviors to try to neutralize all the anxiety and distress. And so OCD first really showed up in my life when I was really young, and I didn't know it at the time, right? But when I really look back on it, I used to worry about different things and kind of obsess about them. And I would do these different compulsive behaviors. So like I used to worry that my parents would die one day, right, when I was a little kid. So I would do things to try to keep them safe or something like that, right? And then it really got bad when I was right out of college, right? And I remember, kind of onset, like out of nowhere, like I was sitting in class and these thoughts started popping up. And then the thoughts like kept going. And then I would do something to try to I need to get rid of that thought, or I need to, do this, or I need to pray this way, or, I need to do all these things. And all of a sudden, just over a short period of time, I was just starting getting consumed by these thoughts. These thoughts would pop in and I would do this behavior. And I thought that I was just keeping myself safe, right? And, so you have these just thoughts that just don't stop, right? And you're doing it and you're trying to engage them. And this winds up just kind of spiraling out of control, where this just was my day-to-day life. Like I would wake up and all the way till I went to bed at night, I was just battling thoughts. Right? And the problem is that not only was I battling all these thoughts, but I was looking around, and this was right when I was first in college, and I just knew that this wasn't the same way other people were living their life, right? Like I was watching people happily interacting with each other, going out on dating, and having fun, and I was just unable to do that because I was just struggling so much in my head, right? And then, so eventually I started trying to get help, right? And I ended up going to this therapist that was on school, and it was free, right? And it was a great guy, but didn't know anything about OCD. And he just kept reassuring me that what I was worrying about wasn't something that I needed to worry about, and so on and so forth. And the problem is that just kept making me worse. So then I needed to see him more and more because he offered me that reassurance that I wanted, right? And that is kind of the cycle of OCD, right? Is that the more and more you try to get rid of the thoughts, the more and more they show up, and the more distress they cause, right? So the harder you try to get rid of them, the worse you get, right? And even if you're trying to get help from other people, it ends up actually making you worse and worse and worse. And so then I eventually realized that wasn't working with that therapist. So I ended up, and it wasn't that guy's fault. He thought he was trying to help me, but he just didn't understand OCD or OCD treatment. So then I ended up seeing another therapist, and the same thing, I just wasn't getting better. I just kept getting worse, and I couldn't figure out why, right? And I just remember feeling so distraught after just time and again, no matter what I did, I just kept getting worse, and I didn't know what to do, right? I just felt lost. I felt lost and hopeless. Until finally, I ended up, I was getting reassurance one day at this church, right? And this lady, she looks at me and she's like, I think you have OCD. And I'm like, no, I don't wash my hands. I'm not perfectionism. I don't care about germs. I don't have OCD. And she persisted to have me research it. And I was like, okay. So I ended up checking it out a little bit. And lo and behold, I learned that there's all these different forms of OCD. Right? And that aligned exactly with what I was experiencing. So now I had a direction, right? And that was okay, I need to get help with OCD. And so I go and meet with an OCD specialist, and the first thing they tell me is okay, well, we need to do something called ERP, and that means that you need to do the exact things that you're afraid of doing. And I'm like, whoa, no thanks, not doing this, right? And I was super resistant to this treatment, right? But once I actually got some education, and then of course, you know, is a good specialist, so he ended up kind of explaining how it worked. And what he explained to me was like, look, every time that thought popped up, right, and it caused that anxiety spike, that I didn't really have any control over the thoughts that were just popping up in my head, or I didn't really have control over the anxiety that I was experiencing. But what I had control over was how I responded to it, right? And so any way that I responded to it, whether it's a mental compulsion, whether like trying to push the thought away, or analyzing the thought, or ruminating about the thought, right? Or, you know, trying to, you know, replace the thought with a good thought, right? Those are mental compulsions. Or physical compulsions, whether I was having to physically read the Bible, or if I was having to, you know, physically go check a lock or the stove. Anything that I did physically or mentally that either when it came to avoiding something or checking something or getting reassurance or trying to control anything, all those things, when I chose to do that in a response to the thought, I was actually making OCD worse. And then what happened was, and so what that really allowed me to see was that I actually had the choice to stay in OCD or to challenge my behaviors and get better, right? And it was hard work. I don't want to minimize that, but the more and more I started removing those compulsive behaviors from my life, what I started to notice was that, yeah, my anxiety would spike up and it would go down eventually. My brain started learning that this stuff I was worrying about wasn't actually a threat. Right, and what happens is your brain actually starts to heal and work in a new healthy way, because it's learning that these things you're worrying about aren't actually real threats. They're just thoughts, they're worries, right? They're doubts and uncertainty. And the more and more I fed that by doing compulsions, the worse and worse they got. And that was really kind of that turning point for me. And what happened was as I went and completed my own treatment process of really facing my fears, what happened was it's not that I never had thoughts that bothered me again, or I never felt anxious again, because I'm human, and that stuff is stuff that all humans experience. But what happened was I started to learn the strength of that, hey, you know, facing your fears work. And then I got more confident to face bigger fears and more confident to face bigger fears. And then I was able to use these tools in all different aspects of my life to build a whole new life for myself, as opposed to one that was super limited from OCD. Because when I was trapped in OCD, again, it's like, you know, no matter what you did, it was like I wasn't dating, I was living it with my parents still, and I didn't know how to help myself, right? And I was just getting worse and worse and worse. And now you flash forward, you know, several years down the road, you know, I'm able to help other people now, right? And I married, you know, the woman of my dreams, you know, we're gonna have a baby, and it's like I have this life that you know, I never thought I could even, it never even was possible to me that I could achieve this kind of life, right? And I feel so grateful and so blessed every day I wake up. But again, you know, when I was really struggling, again, that feeling of hopelessness was so real. And so if you are struggling, you know, one thing that I just want to tell you is like, realize that that's temporary, right? And if you struggle with anxiety and OCD, there are tools that will help you get better, and there you can get your life back, and you can recover, and you can build whatever kind of life that you really want. And that is like the one thing I want you to take away from this episode here, is that you can build whatever kind of life you can imagine for yourself, but it is going to take hard work, it's going to take dedication, and you know, it's not going to be easy, but it's going to be totally worth it in the end. And that is something that I assure you, and that, you know, the more and more I work with my clients, and you know, the more and more they're able to achieve that stuff, and you just see it happening again and again. And so again, thank you so much for taking the time to be here today and to be with me on this episode. If you like this, please support the channel by subscribing and liking. And then I also have some free resources in the notes below, so be sure to check those out. And until next time, you know, my name's Matt, and I'll see you soon, and hope you have a wonderful day.